Welcome everybody, Major League Baseball, very close to first pitch, and I'm talking once again with Mark Lathrop, MLB analyst, and he's breaking down a system, Sabermetrics, which is really interesting. It's used on a bet to determine team totals, wins for the whole season, and today we're going to talk about the NL Central, which is a very interesting division. It's loaded with talent. There's some young, up-and-coming teams, some new managers in this division that are going to have a big impact on their teams. Mark, first and foremost, thanks again for joining us. In looking at the NL Central, a couple teams right away stick their heads out, and that's being the Pirates and the Chicago Cubs. So if you will, kind of break down what you think of those two teams and what the number is set at right now for team totals.
Right, well, the Cubs have the highest projected win total in my system right now, and it's well-deserved. They have 5 players that are projected more than 4 wins above replacement, and there's entire rosters in the MLB that don't have one of those. So when you have that kind of depth of superstar talent, you can have a guy go down. You're going to be able to beat up on the lower teams of the division, and for instance, one of those lower teams, Milwaukee, would be one of the worst teams in the MLB right now as far as projected win totals. So you're going to have a team that has superior talent that's going to be able to beat up on lower tier teams like Milwaukee and Cincinnati and really rack up that win total. So I really do like the Cubs as far as the division. I don't like the odds. I don't like giving up money. I think there's a few different ways to place that bet. Maybe a MVP bet on Chris Bryant or Anthony Rizzo instead of giving up money. But I do like the over for Chicago. Definitely, even at 92.5.
Wow, that's an interesting number. I love them Cubs, and I'm looking forward to doing videos with you in MLB this season. One thing that motivates me in other sports, and it helps me, and I'm successful at what I do in handicapping. I'm not tapping myself on the back, but one system I use also is motivation from teams and the coaches and the dynamics of player and coach. And as we spoke about in the NL West video, here's another scenario. Chicago Cubs. I mean, I just loved it when they hired Joe Madden. Not only does he bring the best out of players and teaches them how to learn how to play as a team without any egos, being resounding and profound. He also just knows how to go and have the depth in the roster. He can take a second string player and literally have him at, producing stats like a first stringer in no time. He is, I think, going to take this team finally to the promised land and get a World Series, whether it's this year or next, whatever. I see it coming. Again, I'm going to ask you, what do you think of the Cubs and the Joe Madden motivation that he brings into that clubhouse day in and day out?
Well, I mean, it's a pretty short take for me. If you can win in Tampa Bay, you can win definitely with a roster like the Cubs. There's some park factors there, but there's a lot of interesting rivalries in that division, and I think Joe Madden would have the kind of personality to bring the best out of that situation instead of making it a negative.
And that makes sense as well. There's one other team that falls into the category. There's a friend that I grew up with. It's a general manager of the Pirates, Frank Coonley. He's been there for a long time now, and he really has this young team. He's got the fans believing. Exciting to watch. I mean, Andrew McCutchen, one of the top athletes, and my hat's off to him, because when he signed a huge deal, his production didn't dip, which happens to about 85% of these overpaid athletes. And Andrew McCutchen not only showed up, but MVP, style play again, loves playing for that city. But the Pirates, they're loaded as far as in several areas with talent. What is the total on them, and what's your thoughts on the Pittsburgh Pirates this year?
Well, as far as the system bet goes, the Pittsburgh's a pass. Their numbers are about 86.5. They're projected at 88, and that's a pass for me because the projection systems end up being a little optimistic. So what I found last year was anything that was really an under came in at about 80% on the lean, and once I bumped it up to about 2. As far as adjusting it for the optimism in the model, I was still near 75%. So Pittsburgh's a pass. One of the reasons for that for me is their biggest offseason acquisition was John Jaso, which is a part-time catcher who's now going to get about 400 at bats at first base. A platoon guy, and they are really in an arms race with the Cubs. And if you look at the Cubs and St. Louis, Pittsburgh's still going to be probably slotting in third there, which makes that 86.5 wins probably about, right, if anything else.
Wow, that's a great breakdown, and that's a tight number. And when I think of Pittsburgh, what they've done in the last couple of years, and what I foresee them doing, again based on not major injuries, that number's tight. That's a tough one to call. So I understand the pass on that. Very interesting. Here's a team also, Mark, that several years ago, not only were they exciting to watch, but they really had a legitimate shot at eventually winning and possibly a World Series. And it went south quick in Milwaukee. And here's a team I think not only rebuilding, but still scratching their head searching for an identity. What are your thoughts on the Brewers, and what's the number for them on the team totals?
Well, the Brewers are sitting at 69.5. They're one of the worst teams as far as roster construction with WAR. And my concern with the Brewers is they're going to shop whoever they have that is a good player. They've got Jonathan LaCroix, who's worth 2.7 WAR. So that could actually create, an under lean for me, because the roster construction, of course, for my projections are based that he's there. Cincinnati is another team that may fall into that predicament. They have a very strong over lean in my model, about 8 games. But, you could look at the All-Star break, and Cincinnati could be playing 500 ball and still be 10 games back of the Cubs. So they might shoot out like Jay Bruce, for example, and throw out my model. It's just one of those things you have to monitor in spring training, injuries and that kind of thing, as far as adjusting your models going forward.
Yeah, and that seems to be the Cincinnati Reds. It's year in and year out. They can bring it at any time, and they always are loaded with enough veteran presence as well as depth. And the pitching seems to, at times be a weak point, but they have enough talent to get, done what they need to get done, and always keep it interesting and stay in the race. Now, the last team in that division, which is probably one of the more interesting as well, for me, sometimes people say, oh, they're a dull team, they're boring to watch, the Cardinals. No, they're just a very well-coached team, a oiled machine. What are your thoughts on the Cards, and what is the number for team totals for them this year? And is this one that you have a play or possibly a strong lean on?
Yeah, the Cardinals are the only team in this division that come with an under lean, and they're sitting at 87.5 games for the futures number, and that's well deserved. I think St. Louis has won 86 or more games for 8 seasons in a row. So if any team is due for a little dip, that'd be St. Louis. But, a dip for St. Louis is probably a 500 season. They really have a chance to catch lightning in a bottle with their top 4 starters. But, they all have very, serious injury concerns, 1 through 4. So they could really blow up in the good way or a bad way. But at 87.5, and the Cubs and Pittsburgh, having the rosters they do, the lean is on the under for St. Louis this year.
Well, just talking about this, especially the NL Central and the NL West, as we did the previous video, it just gets me going. I can't wait. I'm so fired up for baseball this year. To review that, Mark, in the NL Central, what would you say your top 2, whether it was a lean or a play, if you could review them again, which 2 would be your top 2 to put out there out of that division?
I'm taking the Cubs over 92.5. I really think they're going to beat up on the lower tier teams in that division. And, in the National League, you've got some real bottom feeders that are going to give up a lot of wins. And then the next strongest play is St. Louis under 87.5, even though I hate to say it.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, viewers, you heard it. Mark Lathrop, he likes the Cubs on the over of 92.5 and the Cardinals under 87.5. And do yourselves a favor, viewers, go to our sports picks page for Major League Baseball. Mark writes some fantastic articles on a daily basis for us. And not only are the articles loaded with stats and figures that don't lie, but also he gives picks and also suggestions on leans. So Major League Baseball, you can cash a lot of tickets with Mark Lathrop. Mark, thanks so much for your time, my friend. Have a great day, and I look forward to talking to you again real soon.
All right, thanks, Mike.